Speaking of quarterbacks, let's go up to the NovaCare Center where John McMullen is live today as the Eagles get ready to have practice at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. They will take the field for the first full team practice today. John, how are you, pal?
Doing well, and we're going to see if they take the field or take the practice bubble because there is a storm that is brewing right here.
Yeah, I guess that's why they moved things up in the first place. I was under the impression that practices were all like 8:30 in the morning. Weren't you hemming and hollering about that last week?
Yeah, and they are. This is the only one that's in the afternoon, basically because this is the day. The veterans had to report last night, and they had to pass a conditioning test this morning. So this is the only practice that Doug is going to have in the afternoon. Everything else is going to be 8:30, sometimes even 8:10 in the morning. So this is going to be a rare occurrence. The one at the Link on Sunday is going to be about, I think, 10:30 in the morning. So that shifts a little bit because that's open to the public. But by and large, they're going to be an early morning team.
John, I guess the number one thought from me is Sam Bradford. We know we just kind of discussed everything that happened with him, and how is he being received? Any ill feeling towards him, or does it actually feel as if nothing really happened?
No, certainly from the players' perspective, it feels like nothing happened. I think they understand. By and large, there's kind of a code that you don't get involved with other people's personal business when it comes to contracts, and nearly everyone subscribes to that theory. So I think from the players' perspective, it doesn't matter at all, and he was barely gone. It was barely a blip. From the fans' perspective, remember, they haven't been let in yet. So it'll be interesting when there's an open practice on Sunday to see what kind of reaction he gets, because I think that part of it is a little hurdle he has to get over. But the reality is, as training camp is now, it's not like it was before where the public was in there every single day. Now it's just basically a few season ticket holders will start coming after the DNC will leave next week. And other than that, there's the 2 open practices at Lincoln Financial Field. So there's not a lot of opportunity for the fans to actually see this team and give us their temperature on how they feel about Sam Bradford. I can only speculate. I don't think it's going to be good.
Well, yeah, we were just kind of discussing that. I asked Pete, does he think that it kind of be like a water under the bridge feeling? And the obvious answer is that no, that probably will not happen for Sam. And, you know, he's under a lot of pressure. I mean, he's going to have to perform here. I don't know how much you've got to see of him during some of the OTAs or even earlier this week if he was out there at all. But from this time last year to where he is now, do you see a lot different guy in terms of, you know, how gimpy he was at times last year where, you know, he couldn't even play in preseason games because he just simply wasn't ready? Do you see a guy that is way past that stage of the rehab and the knee injuries and a lot healthier guy at this stage of camp?
Yeah, and that's the biggest advantage. He's completely healthy for the first time in an off season in 3 years. So you're right. At this time last year, forget about the off-season work. He didn't do anything. He wasn't ready to ramp it up in training camp until well into it. So he's way ahead at this point of where he was last season. And generally, up to now, it's only been, shirts and shorts. And that's where Sam thrives because he does have a tremendous arm. He's got great accuracy. And he always looks like an all-pro when he's throwing in 7-on-7. You remember that quote from Jeff Fisher, the football never hits the ground. But it's a lot different when you get the pass on and he starts getting hurried, the pass rush starts coming, he starts hearing some of those footsteps and maybe some ghosts at times. And that's sort of where Sam has broken down. So it remains to be seen. But now that he's healthy, he's already told us he's put on about 6 or 7 pounds. That doesn't sound like a lot, but he's at 220 now, and he wants to stay at that weight, and he thinks it'll help him sort of take the pounding a little bit better than what he played at before, which is about 212, and then he would sort of go down from there. So he is better prepared, and part of it is because he was healthy in the off season. and he could do some of that off-season work, and not only the on-field stuff, but also working out and getting his body in better shape.
John McMullen with us, talking Eagles football. And, John, Mike and I were discussing the identity of the team. What would you say the identity of this team will be, or who do they want to be?
That's a good question, Pete. I don't think anybody knows what the identity of this team is, and that's why some people have speculated there isn't the usual juice for the opening of training camp that there typically has been in Philadelphia, because everyone knows that the quarterback is the lame duck, and he's only going to be here very, very likely for one more year. And not only do the fans know that, Sam Bradford himself knows it. So it's tough to look at this team and say it has an identity right now. I think as it develops, as we get later into the process, I think the identity is going to be Jim Schwartz's defense, because I think that's the more talented group, and I think that's the side of the football that's going to stand out for the Philadelphia Eagles this season.
And then how about training camp so far? I mean, I know it's only been the rookies for a couple days, but what changes have you seen, or what's have you noticed versus the Chip Kelly camp and then now Doug Pederson there? For example, I saw some of the neighbors were pleased that there's not loud blaring music all the time.
Is that actually true?
A little music, but not. Yeah, it's not nearly as loud, not nearly as grating. Generally brings it in for special teams drills when somebody needs a little bit of juice, maybe to get them more into it. But it's a traditional football environment. I say it all the time. It's back to the future. It's exactly down to the schedule. It's exactly how Andy Reid ran things. So we have sort of hit the rewind button, gone back 3 years, and gone back to the same system, with the exception of Lehigh, that the Eagles had when Andy Reid was here, and obviously that completely morphed. So it's been back and forth and herky-jerky, and that's been part of the problem with this organization. You have to show the courage of your convictions. I think the biggest mistake, I say it all the time, I've said it to Mike many times, was not getting rid of Chip Kelly. It was the year before. And Jeffrey Lurie should have stood his ground and said, nope, Howie Roseman's my guy. He's going to be the leader of the football operations. If you don't like it, you can walk. If you want to coach the team, you're the coach of the football team, that's fine. That's where they made their mistake. And that's what set this organization back, because they've had these two drastic changes in a calendar year, basically. That doesn't bode well for success in the NFL.
Well, I know some of the guys, John, like Lane Johnson, have said that they expect fights during this camp because they expect it to be more physical. So they seem to be happy that the physicality is back, or they seem to be indicating that. Is that true? Do they like a physical camp? Do they like tackling, returning?
Yeah, certainly the big guys do. They love to hit somebody, and that generally is the offensive line. And Alan Barber already got a couple fights during OTAs, and they didn't even have pads on. So I think those guys are tremendously excited. And Lane specifically, he gave that great quote after Chip was let go, and he said, I'm tired of this expletive. I've been doing it since college. He wanted no part of that up-tempo system anymore. So guys like him and Jason Peters, who's 34 years old and has injury problems, and that pace was wearing on his body. Guys like that are very, very excited to get back to a traditional football environment.
John McMullen's with us from 97.3 ESPN.com at the NovaCare Center. Eagles will practice in about 20 minutes. They'll start things off. We talk about the physicality. A lot of it's been very Andy Reid, modeled after the Andy Reid, practice. What is the perception around the league so far of Doug Pederson? What has kind of, now that the way that he's got some things thrown in his, much like Chip Kelly did when he got here, he had some things thrown right in his lap. He has Nelson Aguilar, now Nigel Bradham. He's a first-time head coach, a surprise first-time head coach. What's the whispers around about the way that he's kind of handling things as a rookie head coach?
Well, I think people have been a little unfair. I think it was a couple of weeks ago where NFL.com rated the head coaches and had them dead last at 32. And I think that's kind of ridiculous considering Obviously, the guy hasn't coached a game, so at the very least, you should get the rookie head coach as an incomplete. But Bill Parcells was the guy who gave the advice to Mike Zimmer, who's a good friend of his, when he got the job in Minnesota. And he told him, there's going to be 4 or 5 things that happen every day in the NFL that you don't want to happen. And if you can't handle it, you better get another job. And that basically is what happened. It's what is happening to Doug Pederson. It happens to every head coach. In his case, he's had really 3 high-profile off-the-field type stuff. You had the Sam Bradford contract issue, and then Nelson Aguilar, as you mentioned, and Nigel Bradham with the legal trouble. So if you look at the Bradford incident, he handled that tremendously. He not only steered this team towards something that was very, very, at least awkward, tremendously well, but Sam Bradford speaks very, very highly of Doug Pederson now for the specific way he handled that whole situation and the fact that he understood why Sam was upset, and he got him back in here, and he sort of tempered it and said, explained exactly what we all know, but did it in a way where Sam could understand and said, look, you're a starting quarterback. If you want to be a starting quarterback in this league moving forward, you have to embrace that. And I think it's worked. And I think in that specific instance, at least, he certainly handled it better than Chip Kelly would have handled it. So it's early. We haven't seen what he's been able to do on the football field just yet, so you can't say he's going to be a good head coach. But early indications are this guy is pretty good at what he does.
Huh. Well, we just got news that the Eagles have moved their practice indoor due to the rain, and their press conferences won't be streamed live. They'll be posted later on the site. So, John, you're inside today, pal.
Yeah, it's great. It's not humid or anything, so you'll have about 1,000 people inside this confined space.
Yikes.
I'll get you some of my towels, John. You know I always have those towels.
All right, we'll be checking in with John, obviously, throughout this week and all training camp. You can read all this stuff at 973ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter, and all his national coverage over at todayspigskin.com. And the big news really nationally is Fitzpatrick signed a 1-year, $12 million deal. All right, John, we'll let you get over to the bubble.
All right, thanks, guys.